Man, let's talk a little bit about one thing that you bring to the table that always excites me is you talk about this shift. We're going through another one, but you talk about a shift from like the Renaissance time to the Industrial Revolution, and there was a huge shift in consciousness, particularly the way that we interacted with nature, with magic, even magic as far as just seeing everything as being alive, seeing everything having a spirit, everything having a consciousness, whether it's dealing with the plants and the trees and the angels. And I mean, Renaissance art embodied all of this stuff, you know, but there was a period where we stepped away from that, and you kind of pinpointed during the Industrial Revolution. Can you talk a little bit about what changed there and into some detail in our relationship with nature and with each other?
Absolutely. And I tell you, this is like, I'm real serious about this, right? And I joke whenever I do conferences that if I could get away with this would be the only thing I would teach when I would go speak. Because to me, this is the key to understanding our modern age, where we've come from and where we're going. But the problem is that it can sometimes bog down a little bit philosophically and academically, and it's like you'll lose the room if this is all you did, you know? So you have to talk about other things, but if I could get away with it, this is all I would talk about. And again, you have to give credit where it's due here. I would not have understood this, again, if it weren't for the work of Owen Barfield, who I'd never heard the scientific revolution described until I read his book, Saving the Appearances. And then that, again, gave credence to everything that I was experiencing in my own life. But I mean, like in a nutshell, you know, 400 years ago, everything changed. And we don't even know it. It changed things so completely that it actually erased our memory of where we had come from. And so for, 98% of human history, we're talking, if we're just going to go on a biblical narrative, 5,650 years of human history. And every single person that walked the earth took it for granted that everything that they sensed in the cosmos, that wasn't the end of the story, that everything had some kind of spiritual being that was personifying it, inhabiting it, that, if you saw a planet or the sun or the moon or a tree or a rock or an ocean, or you felt a virtue like generosity or courage, that those were simply representations of that spiritual reality, those spiritual beings. And everybody took that for granted. Like it would just never occur to them that there was some other way to see the world. And then, of course, that includes the Messiah. This is like the part that just like, how did we not know this, right? It was right there in the pages that when he talks to the wind and he talks to the waves, he's speaking to someone. And the wind and the wave was the representation of that someone. And when he talks to the tree and he tells his disciples to talk to the mountain, he suggests that if people stop praising, the rocks will talk. He's affirming, I guess, the reality that they all took for granted, but for us, it's weird. Mm-hmm. And it's only weird because the world went through this scientific revolution. And I'm going to do everybody a favor that listens to this right now. I'm going to spare you from reading Owen Barfield's book, Saving the Appearances, because it is a difficult task to get through that book. He did not write it with any of us in mind. So it's dense. It's very dense. But here it is in a nutshell. What happened in the scientific revolution is our math got good. And people that were natural philosophers, that were looking at nature and the cosmos, we've always been trying to predict how nature will behave. Could we predict the next eclipse? Could we predict why the waves work the way that they do? I mean, it's just always been human pursuit, because we were always thinking we'd like to know what those spiritual beings are doing. So if we could predict the motion and the behavior of the objects in nature, we would have a better idea of those spiritual beings, right? So that was always the idea. And we'd make models to kind of describe what they were doing. In the 1600s, we had Newton, Copernicus, Kepler, Galileo. All of their work spanned, over 100 years or so. It did this. It said, if we can create a model that explains the behavior of nature seemingly without error, then that's all the truth there is to know. That's the scientific revolution in a nutshell. It just saved you, everybody that's listening, tons of time. All right. So There it is. That's the giant change. If we can make a model that explains the motion of the planets, the sun, the moon, or how nature does what it does, how the tides work, why leaves photosynthesize, and it seemingly works without error, then that's the end of truth. There's no need for a spiritual reality at all. And so that cut off from our consciousness what 98% of human history took for granted, that there's this spiritual being reality in all of the cosmos and every aspect of nature, both the tangible matter stuff and then the intangible things like virtues, that it was all spiritual. The effects of that are crazy because you can see what it did. It changed the idea that the cosmos was a spiritual place like a temple, and it changed it to the idea that the cosmos was a machine and that it's just about input, output. There's nothing behind the curtain to even participate with anymore. So you understand the sun is an object, you're done. You understand the tree is this photosynthesizing thing, you're done. You understand that mountains are made up of, various rock, and that's just elements and minerals and compounds, you're done. That's all the truth there is. There's no personality to engage with. Now, obviously, I don't think that's the end of where the story should be, or we wouldn't be having this conversation today. It wouldn't be anything to talk about. It would just be like, well, that sucks, Now, everyone else had all the fun. They got to live in this Narnia-like world, and here we are in this empty machine, industrial thing that doesn't have any life in it or meaning in it, and that's what happens when you take spirit out. You end up taking meaning out. I tell my students this, I teach, or I did. I'm taking a sabbatical this next year, but I did teach philosophy to high school seniors. And I would always tell them the challenge of your day is going to be how to rediscover meaning in your world, because it's all gone. It's gone as we took spirit out of our world. When you're left with objects, you're left with meaninglessness. And so the thing I'm always pointing everyone to is that Romans chapter 8 moment where Paul says that all of creation, the entire cosmos, is groaning, moaning, waiting for the sons of God to be revealed, because when they're revealed, they can free the creation. And to me, that looks like renewing it. That looks like bringing all of what we had lost back into the picture. We're not going to go backwards, because that's not the way forward. It's never backwards. But the way forward certainly isn't the direction we're going either. It's got to be some newly charted course that brings back into our consciousness that spiritual being reality was real, or we kind of have to discount 98% of human history. And then the trouble with that is that's when the Gospels were written too, so you can't do that, right? You have to know that they're telling the truth. They were just seeing kind of a different part of the world than we see today. So that's it in a nutshell right there.